Very pleased now to be joined here at Blog of the Boys by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair, the incredibly handsome, the incredibly tall. I believe his driver's license says he's 6'3". He just told me he thought it was an incredible idea for Marvel to cast John Krasinski in the one Doctor Strange movie. It is from PFF, John Owning. John, is all of that true?
Oh, every single bit. You know, we're team Krasinski over Pedro Pascal. Fantastic Four in this house.
Are you a Pedro person? Are you one of these people?
Yeah, I do think he's good. I thought it was a little like, I'm not gonna lie, when he didn't strike me as a Reed Richards type. Like, I don't get like the nerdy, super sciencey guy like vibe from him from what he's done. You know, Mandalorian, the Red Viper, the Last of Us, all of that stuff. So it's gonna be interesting. You know, I think he's a fantastic actor, so I'm sure he's gonna do a great job. But he definitely wasn't gonna be my first choice going into, you know, Fantastic Four from reading the comics and obviously the terrible movies of years past.
I liked the original Fantastic Four movie. Like when we were kids, I thought that movie was cool. Like I remember going to the midnight release and everything.
The first
like,
one's better than the second one. The second one, when they start bringing in Galactus with the cloud, that's a little weird.
Yeah.
And then I like the one with whatchamacallit, with Michael B. Jordan and what's his name?
The hardcore Philly guy, the one who was like, "Watch out, everybody!"
Top Gun. Yeah. I thought, you know, that one is not. I'm very in the minority when I don't think that one wasn't terrible, just because I think it was a different take on the characters. But I'm hoping I have really high expectations for this one. I think it's going to be great. They're bringing in my boy Franklin Richards into it. I think that's going to be fantastic. Powerhouse is going to reset the power structure of the MCU, so that's going to be fun. But we will see. You know, getting your hopes up in this, as we were saying, these phase or generation of MCU movies often leaves us wanting. So I'm hoping they can build off the goals.
I've always felt like I can be honest with you, John, and I feel like all Cowboys fans feel that way. I associate you so much with the NFL draft, and you did something that I really hate with the draft. I hate the like my guy, my boy, and then you use that as a prefix for somebody incredibly popular, like, you know, my guy. Neil Patrick Harris, you know, like I'm the one who discovered it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a little bit of, you know, you want to say that about some day 3 pick,
you know, my guy, yeah. Oh my God, Travis Hunter, you know, real under the radar.
Exactly. I really hate that. In general, that was okay. I think it's okay because it's about Fantastic Four and people have assumed it's going to be bad. It does feel very, we're trying to get everybody who you like in this movie type thing. Like the guy from The Bear, Pedro, what's her name from The Crown? Yeah. So, you know, hey, what's the last thing you watched? We're recording this Monday. Last thing you watched on wherever you watched it.
Oh, this is not going to be good. It's going to be what's it called? Power of Love or whatever on HBO Max, where they have all the 90-day fiance people on it trying to find love.
I don't think it's called HBO Max anymore.
Max.
Yeah. Wow. Power of Love is one of my favorite songs by Huey Lewis and the News. It was in Back to the Future.
Like that. It's something of love. I'm not sure if it's power or whatever. You know, I watch it with my wife. That and Love Island or you know, our big trashy shows that we're watching right now. We just finished Vanderpump Villa on Disney Plus Hulu. So, you know, you got to make the wife happy. She has to watch all of the MCU and sports stuff with me every day, so I gotta make the sacrifice.
She's grinding tape. She's breaking it down.
Tape. Dude, leading up to the draft, I legitimately pull up like highlights and like have her watch. Like, these are the guys the Cowboys can pick. Which ones do you like? She was a big Ted McMillan fan. She liked my boy Donovan Ezraku, who actually Cowboys.
Your boy Donovan Ezraku, yeah.
My guy, but. Yeah, so she likes to get into it so that she has like a rooting interest. I also show her like all the real like emotional things the ESPN posts, you know, all the great stories, so that she can get emotionally invested in some of these players. So that's always fun.
Wow,
it's always fun to be crying with your wife, you know, as you're watching the draft.
Yeah, we'll show her the Tyler Booker thing with Micah. The like, I like to like steal people's souls or whatever. Yeah, like that kind of stuff. So I sent you some questions, some Cowboys things to talk about. I'm going to go a little bit out of order just because you kind of set it up this way. Is your wife, is this a DeMarcus Lawrence household in general?
Sure. She knows. She knows. She knows. She knows when like that name ever comes up. She's like, oh, he's really good. He's really good. You know,
so
don't tell John.
So for anyone who's unaware, and I can't imagine this would be the case, John has fought the good fight, and the time has come for you to lay down your sword. Your watch has ended. DeMarcus Lawrence is gone. You were the loudest person and the most authoritative person. Whenever anyone would come, he doesn't have as many sacks as he should. He's overpaid. He can't even stop the run. John Owning sniped them all. So I've been waiting to ask you this in an audio way. How awkward was the departure for you specifically? Because it had to be tough. When he was, speaking, to say the least.
Oh yeah, the pain was palpable, especially too when they leave and then he gets in an argument with Micah, who's like,
that's what I'm saying. Like it had to be awkward for you that he was like calling the team out.
And I thought it was fun. I enjoy that stuff when players are like talking to each other. I think it makes it funner. I think there should be more smack talking in the NFL and in big sports in general. I come from like an MMA background where that type of smack talking is kind of what adds to the product. And I think it would make it even funner on Sundays if they would talk smack to each other. I don't get the idea of like, don't give them bulletin board materials. Like they weren't trying hard in the first place.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very professional to me personally, but I suppose, it's whatever, but it hurt. It hurt. He's my favorite player. Him and DeMarcus Ware and Larry Allen, kind of a different generation. Those are my three like favorite players of all time. So seeing him leave was painful. It sucked. He's someone who I like no matter what, if he played, he was the first guy I was going to watch in my rewatches, seeing how he played. I just really enjoyed like the technique, the effort he puts in. The whole leadership thing on the field, he was always sprinting to the ball, all those type of things. And he's really one of the people that really, was there throughout my football progression. He was just drafted by the Cowboys when I just like started getting into writing and stuff and breaking down things. So a lot of my things when I was learning the finer details of like rushing the passer, run defense, edge play in general, he was the muse, the guy that I was watching a lot. I was like, oh, this is what's working. This is what doesn't. These are things that he can work on. These are things that he can. And then seeing him work on those things consistently and shore up those holes. I think he just really benefited me in my progression of football knowledge, just because of like his progression as a player really coincided with my progression as like a writer / analyst.
I think we all, people who are kind of like mid 30s ish, mid 40s ish, kind of cut from the same generation, feel that way. And I think it's maybe why we get so defensive over Dak, is because like we've fought this fight before. You know what I mean? So, and we know how it ends, and so we know you need to treat it as a precious thing while you have it. But so it's really interesting that his development kind of ran in parallel with you. It probably helped him. That when you were first breaking down tape, it was like, well, let me flip on DeMarcus Lawrence after watching Jeremy Mincey. You know what I mean? Like he stands out a little bit, relative to that. So I wanted to ask you, and I told you this, who do you pick up your sword for now? Like, who's that guy? Because for a long time, DeMarcus has been this subject, and we always tag you when people tweet at the BTB handle. When people would say stupid stuff, we would like just like kind of send them to John's office type thing. So who is that? Like who's that person for you now? And it has to be a person who that crap is out there for. You can't be like Donovan Ezra because that crap isn't out there for him yet.
Yeah. And I would say now there's not really a player where in totality that I have to do that, because just where the Cowboys like stars are in general, like everybody knows like where CeeDee Lamb is. Right. Obviously Dak, he's such a controversial quote unquote figure that I feel like there's already so many people on each side that me like jumping on, obviously I'm a Dak truther, but jumping on that side isn't going to do much. So what I'm like picking out is like certain traits of players. And the main one that I've kind of like locked in on is Micah Parsons against the run, because there's like this really
he's the anti DeMarcus. He's the foil, what
I
mean?
Yeah. So it's like really odd that people think that, like, in my opinion, really odd to I think they see how great of a pass rusher Micah Parsons is, and like how impactful and how consistently dominant he is in that facet. And then you see the run defense where he's not up to that par, and they say, oh, he's a bad run defender. And then that coincides with the Cowboys being really poor against the run in recent years. And he's the most popular guy. He's the best player on the defense. So it's easy to blame him for the run defense woes. But I think that's really misinformed. I think he actually does a really good job against the run. And the quote unquote issues he had against the run are things that we praised DeMarcus Lawrence with consistently toward the end of his career, but he was just more effective in those situations because he had more experience. So like, for example, there's a thing that when you see people talk about Micah Parsons, this is something that is brought up a lot, is the fact that when he's a C gap defender, meaning he's playing the gap in between the tackle and the tight end, sometimes, when they run those outside zone plays, he'll dart to the B gap to try to get vertical and try to create disruption in the backfield. And, if you mistime it, or say you get caught up a little bit, that gives up that edge runway for the running back. And that's something that DeMarcus Lawrence, so like I would even say like as much as like 30 to 40% of his tackles for loss or run stops in the backfield were as a result of doing that, backdooring that B gap move. But when Micah Parsons does it, and he's a little bit younger, so he's not quite as consistently successful in those situations, they really harp on those. But when you take those out, I think he does a really good job of setting the edge. He sets the edge strong, and he's not the biggest guy. He's only weighing 245. Maybe he'll get up to 250 if at the beginning of a season before, the whole season brings down his weight. So I think he does a really good job there. He plays his gap really well. He doesn't get widened. He doesn't get smashed in. He fights through chip blocks really well. All of those type of things. And I just think people really harp on those really specific situations that only happen maybe once, maybe twice a game. And he gets way too much hate for those situations. And they got, he doesn't play the run. He shouldn't be this big $40 million player, blah, blah, blah. You got to be consistent in both areas. And I really think he is. And I think when you turn on the tape and you watch the line share, the consistent snaps in and out of him against the run, he's very good. Now, is he Calais Campbell on the edge? No, but he's like much higher above average. I would even say he's in the range of a good run defender by an edge defender standards.
Very clear how not passionate you are about defending this particular element of Micah's game. So yeah, like this is what we're talking about. This was the neighborhood that the DeMarcus Lawrence mansion, sat at the center of. Like Micah is kind of like one of the smaller mansions, on the property. You know what I mean? But very clearly born of the same sort of thing. It is ironic.
To go off of that, the same thing that reminds me that's more tangentially related to DeMarcus Lawrence, especially the no sacks thing. People always point to Micah Parsons' stats in the playoffs, like, he wasn't effective against play because he didn't have six. Like, look at the pass rush win rate. He was winning 23% of his pass rushes. That is an elite number, especially in the playoffs when you're supposedly going against.
Yeah, but John, I'm paying him to get sacks, and he's not. He shrinks. He fades in the playoffs, dude.
All I have to say is look at whatever your passing stat du jour is, whether it's PFF passing grade, EPA per
company
play,
man,
yards per attempt. Look at them when they're pressured, how that goes down. How those metrics fall way below where they are when they aren't unpressured, and then tell me, pressures don't matter. It's only about sacks, and sacks only to make up about 1% of the plays that any edge rusher makes. And if you're evaluating a $40 million player based on 1% of their plays, I think you are very unsmart.
I feel like we've been doing this long enough now that we've kind of run out of ways to say someone is unsmart. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of ways at the beginning, but unfortunately we had to kind of roll through them as we all grew and developed and went on in life, and DeMarcus Lawrence taught us, about things, who knows? It is, the Micah thing is really interesting that someone could pick on the best, the idea that he's not overwhelmingly the best player on the team is hilarious. And
I keep saying online, if you're hating or criticizing Micah Parsons' play, that means you would criticize literally every single other edge defender in the NFL outside of maybe Myles Garrett, who's the only guy I could say that could be above him. I don't think the Bosa's are above Micah anymore. I don't think TJ Watt is above him. I don't think Hendrickson, or I don't think Max Crosby is ahead of him. Any of those, Danielle Hunter, none of those guys are on a snap-by-snap basis as impactful or dominant as Micah Parsons.
I didn't prep you for this, but I want to bring it up now because it's something I've been tagged in a lot lately, people bringing it up. Something that annoyed me that Micah did at the Super Bowl, and I thought of it because you brought up Myles Garrett, was when he or it was even before, but when he brought up how he would take less. It was the most annoying thing. The practical idea that he was ever going to take less. And I feel like that's something he only did to himself in saying that. But people are like, well, he said he would take less and he's holding out, he wants all this money. But it's like, what? why does this matter? Like he deserves that. We all know how this works. Like we can all be adult about this. We don't have to lean on these semantics. And even if he took $1 million less a year, whatever number you want to throw out, like, will you sleep better? You know, will you feel better? Will you be proud of Steven? You know what I mean? Will you stand tall and buy a Stephen Jones, you know, pair of monocles or something? Like that was, to me, the only time he's ever truly annoyed me is in saying that he gave birth to all these people who use it as this crutch now.
And I think he did that on purpose. You know, I think a lot of the things that he has said media-wise regarding the contract in particular are things to foster fan resentment of the franchise instead of him.
Right.
Because we've seen so many of these, you know, potential holdout or contract renegotiation situations where the player is the bad guy.
And then people turn on him.
Yeah, and people turn on him. And I think he was smart to get out of early. And you see everything that he says is totally putting everything on the franchise. You know, he's never allowing the public perception to be put on him that it's because of him he's not playing. You know, it's not because of him that he's renegotiating. When we all know there's always a give and take in those situations, especially when you have a guy like Mulugeta who's going to get you every damn dollar that you're worth. And we've seen that consistently throughout his tenure as one of the biggest agents, and if not the biggest agent in the NFL in recent years. So I think he's just playing. I think personally, like, obviously it's kind of annoying knowing like you're not going to take less. Like, you know that you're going to, and you deserve, and you should. I would tell you as a friend or as anybody else that you should get as much money as you deserve. But I think he was just playing a little bit of that, you know, that media tennis with that play. You know, he was just trying to put the ball in the Cowboys' court, put all the perception on them. And it's worked. I mean, look at how the fan base has really lined up against Steven and Jerry this entire offseason. And you don't really hear much, if any, of the blowback from Micah. And we know the Cowboys fan base will have blowback against Micah. They've done it before, you know, the podcast stuff.
He's the only one. I don't mean this disrespectfully to Dak or CD or DeMarcus, although DeMarcus did kind of pave the way, like was kind of the first to say, okay, fine, I'll play on the tag, whatever. But Dak and CD, even though CD held out, were pretty chill. Like CD had the one moment he blinked when he quoted the Machota tweet about what the Jerry quote at camp that was like, whatever it was, like, we don't need him here or something like that. And CD quoted it like, for real. That was like his only time, you know, sort of, again, just like giving in. Micah's prepared to dish it in a way that Dak and CD weren't. I always thought it was interesting at the Super Bowl in Miami in January, February of 2020. Dak sort of implied that he might hold out. That was entering his first true offseason of negotiations, but then COVID happened and there was nothing to hold out from. And so we never really got to see it. And so Micah's not holding out, but to your point that, you know, we're talking on Monday. I'm very interested to see how much work he does. You know, if he holds in or whatever during the mandatory minicamp, but he's also kind of smart in that sense, like getting ahead of it last week and being like, nope, I'm going to be there and whatever. Like he's kind of neutralizing all the Joneses typical go-to place, if you will.
Yeah. And I think it also helps too that Schottenheimer has been really, really supportive of Micah throughout the whole thing. You know how coaches can be like, oh, he's not here, we're not going to talk about him. We don't talk about players that are not here. But Shotty has been a really good, I think, ally in this situation, where I think is smart of a new head coach who's trying to foster a type of culture in the program. But, you know, it's saying like, I think Micah's doing everything he needs to do. He's being communicative. That's all I ask for. He's here during the important things when it's mandatory, blah, 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 blah. And I think that has also helped him a lot, that Shotty has been kind of a sneaky ally in this situation for Micah. And you don't really see him caping up in the same way for like the front office or anything like you see a lot of head coaches do.
I knew this would happen, so I'm going to apologize again. I have a lot of questions that just developed that I didn't send you. So you're someone who bases, as long as I've known you, everything you know to be true in data, in film, in what you've learned and what you've studied. I mean this, again, respectfully towards the man, but we kind of have none of that with regards to Brian Schottenheimer. And still the tide has turned. I mean, I don't know. I'm imagining it's all of it, but I don't know if we have all just coped. If we're all just giving in, that's a different thing than coping. But the only footballness we have from Brian Schottenheimer, the Dallas Cowboys head coach, is the quote about cut splits. That's it. Like that's the most extensive football we've gotten from him. And yet, I mean, people, like, you just called him an ally, and I agree with you, but like in a really positive way. Like, this dude's glow up in such a small amount of time in a financial quarter in 3 months is weird. And what do you think the fan base is just that desperate, that shallow, that all it takes is, him cussing in a press conference or two to get people on board, him, going along with Micah's kiss on the forehead TikTok trend? What do you think it is?
I think it's just that we're because he has so little information to base him on, we're going on what little information that we have. And the things that he has done as head coach have been, I think, in my opinion, unabashedly great. I think I love the way that he built the coaching staff. I love the different types of personalities he brought on, especially offensively. I love the offensive coaching staff, from the offensive line coach to the running back coach to the wide receiver coach, leaning into the college, while also bringing in some veteran coaches that can give them that NFL experience that are important. And I just think, and that in addition to the things, the way that he talks at press conferences, the way that he has that kind of contagious personality that you just like to be around. He's just one of those people's persons that you could just radiates energy type of thing. And I think that because of those factors, and we don't have the football stuff to really go off of, we're kind of just basing him off of what we know as of now. And that's been overwhelmingly positive. But I think it's going to flip very quickly in the season if things don't go well. I think that this is, it's built on a house of cards. It could tumble very, very easily with the first couple losses, So I would say for sure that the overall feeling about him has changed in a positive direction, but it could quickly take a downshift.
Yeah, I get, listening to you describe it. I didn't have cheesecake until 5 years ago. That was the first time I ever had cheesecake. And when I did, it was amazing. You know what I mean? It was and I was why didn't I like this? Whatever. And at the time I was every weekend it was okay, let's get a cheesecake. You know what I mean? It was all I wanted. And that has I don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think it's that phenomenon that is, and I maintain that Mike McCarthy was similarly charming and funny or whatever. I think people had just made up their mind. And so Brian Schottenheimer is he's their cheesecake at the moment. It's really what it is. You talked about the coaching staff. And one thing I did ask you in advance was Matt Eberflus. Now, this was the one, everybody's in on Clayton Adams. Everybody's pumped. Everybody's, super, the Cardinals ran the ball well. And I'm in no way knocking that. But I think we forget, how great of a staffer Matt Eberflus was for the Cowboys. I always reference, I'm sure you read the piece that Robert Mays wrote about Matt Eberflus and Sean Lee when he was at the Ringer at the time. And from that moment, I was like, man, this dude, and he was Chris Richard before Chris Richard. Before Chris Richard couldn't get the job that Rod Marinelli had, that was Matt Eberflus. And it feels like everybody's just forgotten that. And I'm very excited about his presence.
Yeah, and I think the issue with Matt Eberflus leaving is the reason why Marinelli was more apt to share coordinator responsibilities with Chris Richard for the end of his tenure. I think he saw what happened to Eberflus, him leaving, and that whole fiasco where Eberflus's wife said some things about so it wasn't the happiest ending of the marriage. And I think he saw that with Chris Richard. He didn't want that similar thing to happen. I have this up and coming head coach who's defensive coach who's going to be a defensive coordinator someday. I should take some things off of my tasks and give them to him so that he can feel like he's more important to the overall scheme of the defense. But anyways, yeah. And about Eberflus, I was an Invader Zim lover. I really liked the direction that he was taking the Cowboys. I think the fact that he was just hit so hard with injuries and terrible personnel decisions by the front office, in my opinion, I think those really hampered his ability to put together a consistently effective defense. But we saw the things that he was doing and the adjustments we were making positive changes for the Cowboys, especially toward the end of the season. And I would have liked to see that continue, but obviously I understand why Shoddy would want to bring in his own defensive coordinator to kind of start from scratch type of thing. But from just a scheme perspective and a coaching perspective, I do find myself leaning more toward the Zimmer style than the Eberflus style. The Eberflus style is kind of a little bit more similar to the Marinelli style, which is alignment, assignment. You're not going to see as much disguise. You're not going to see as much exotic looks. I mean, in third downs with Invader Zim, he likes to get crazy with his blitzes, with his coverage rotations, with his pre-post snap disguises, those type of things. And I think those things are all going to be much more limited with Eberflus, but it could be positive. It could allow the players to be faster, play faster because they're not thinking as much. He's going to play a lot more two high shells and rotate into single high. He likes to do the two high shell, rotate to cover three. That was his most popular coverage during his time with the Bears. And we'll see. I think that'll continue with the Cowboys, especially given their personnel of their safeties, with Hooker being much better as a single high safety and Donovan Wilson doing better in the box. But I think we're going to see things like that. You're going to see much less blitzing, I think. Eberflus did get a little bit more blitz happy in his time toward the end of his Bears tenure, but I think that was more as a result of injuries forcing their hand rather than him doing it because that's what he wanted to do. So I think those type of things, you're just going to see a more basic defense. You're going to see a more aggressive front. They're going to be shooting up gaps instead of trying to like play their gap, hold their man, and then shed once the running back declares. They're more like, let me get upfield, create disruption, and we'll let the linebackers fill off of what the linemen are doing. So it does put a little bit more on the linebackers. But Eberflus is the linebacker whisperer. I think in the NFL, he's one of the best people at developing linebackers. He's consistently done it from, like you said, his time back with the Cowboys, but he did it with the Colts. He did it with the Bears. He just does a consistently good job of getting his linebackers trained up to play it to their maximum abilities. And I think that could have, positive benefits on guys like Maris Luafau, even a guy like Damone Clark, even a guy like now that I'm on the spot, I'm forgetting his name, but we just signed him from the Titans. The guy I'm not a
Kenneth
big
Murray
fan.
trade.
Yeah, Kenneth Murray. I'm really not a big fan of him. I think he shouldn't be.
Nobody is. Nobody on the internet likes Kenneth Murray. Yeah,
I think he shouldn't be anywhere near a starting lineup for the Cowboys. But if anybody's going to make him a competent linebacker, it's going to be a guy like Eberflus. He's a fantastic at doing that. And he's consistently done it over his career. So I think that's something that's going to be a positive. Is one of the Cowboys' biggest, struggle points of the last, almost half decade since Sean Lee retired has been the linebacker position, all three, Sam, Will, and Mike. So I think he's going to tune those up. And like every year, I kind of harp on this a lot, but as well as your nose and three technique play is going to determine how well your linebackers are going to play on the large majority of plays. They're just so important to keeping the linebackers' vision free, their ability to make quick decisions, their ability to get to their gaps efficiently and effectively. Those are all, the foundation for those is set by those guys up front. And if they're getting their butts blown back or they're not holding their gaps and they're getting displaced and the linebackers have to make fixes off of them getting displaced, it's going to create so many issues like we've seen dating back to that Rams playoff game that everybody hates. But so I'm excited to see what we're going to do, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a somber note to end on. But ultimately, he has been the linebacker whisperer. Sean Lee's the name we both mentioned, but Anthony Hitchens had a strong development under him. And you mentioned Indianapolis. I wouldn't say he was the reason, but he was certainly a main reason in Darius Shaq Leonard winning Defensive Rookie of the Year over Leighton Vander Esch. That was his first season in Indianapolis. And I also think we forget and don't give him any credit. He followed Josh McDaniels to Indianapolis, and then Josh left. And we only give the credit for that to Frank Reich for coming in and granted that was difficult, but absorbing everything when it was like, well, he followed his guy and he didn't even, get to work for him. So, and Chicago is what it was. I was going to ask you who you thought could be like the primary beneficiary. I think Maris Liufau might be the name. Like everyone will say DeMarvion Overshown, but that's,
Yeah. And plus he's going to miss like the first half, 3/4 of the year. So it's kind of hard to choose him.
You don't buy that though, John? He said, I mean, I don't mean this facetiously, but he said he was coming back for Thanksgiving. I mean,
I hope so. I hope he's right. But I always get worried about, those things because the players always want to come back too early. And that's when we get to the re-injury zone.
Right.
That's when the other ACL goes. That's when the ankle goes because it's compensating too much. I would rather him, get it fully like past the point of where he thinks he's 100%, like maybe like a week or two past that to where he's really strong there. He's not thinking about it, those type of things. He's not compensating for it. I know they got a bunch of sports science programs where you can tell like how much weight they're putting on each foot and like if they're pressing off the equal amounts and all of that. You got to get all of that tuned up to the point where it's just not a factor. And hopefully that's what they do. Hopefully they don't let, the player dictate too much in these kind of situations to let them come back. Because it is hard to be, especially if they're going to be in a situation which a lot of us think they're going to be pushing for a playoff. They're going to be in a playoff race in that time. So it's going to be He's gonna want to play. He's gonna want to play 100%, and it's gonna take really strong, personality in those training staffs to be like, "Hey, chill out. We're gonna get you back when you're at your best."
I certainly don't want this, but you could also see like somebody else getting hurt and then like increasing the need, like, oh, well, and just like you getting tagged in a tweet like, well, John, like, why are you freaking out? Like, Overshown can be back in 2 weeks or whatever. It's like, I don't know, man. Let's pump the brakes a little bit here. This takes us to the last question I prepped you for, and I brought this up with Skywalker Steel. I talked to him last week, but is it fair to say that Dak is injury prone? Because I kind of think like that's a harsh label. And he can be injury prone without being like capital letters injury prone. And I think if you don't admit that he's injury prone, I think you're, or maybe susceptible to injuries, however you want to put this. I don't think you're being fair. Like, I don't want it to be true. I know you don't want it to be true, but it's at the very least he's inordinately unlucky at this point.
I think it's kind of what you alluded to. There's different kind of levels of injury prone. I think the scariest level of injury prone are those guys that are picking up those soft tissue injuries consistently, because those are injuries that just come from playing. You're not getting hit. You're not getting, because as we know, football is it's a car crash on every single play. And in car crashes, something's going to happen. You're going to, mess up your shoulder. You're going to tear a hamstring. You're going to do these type of things. But after seeing, especially the preponderance of lower leg injuries or leg injuries that Dak has had, and if you don't believe there is something there that it makes
some common denominator,
that makes him more susceptible to those leg injuries, like you said, I think you're not looking at it realistically, But does that mean I am like every time he takes off the run, I'm like, No. I think and honestly, I like all the reports and, and theories of people talking about that Dak should be a bigger part of the run game, especially when we're in the red zone, near the goal line, in that blue zone, those type of things. I think is something that is a necessary risk that you need to take in today's NFL, especially. But does he have a greater risk of being injured, especially with the lower legs, with ankles, with hamstrings, with even a knee, given all the injuries and trauma he's had to that portion of his body? For sure, 100%. It's something that they're going to have to take care of. It's something that he's going to have to be mindful of consistently in his recovery and rehabilitation throughout the season as a whole, because he's probably going to pick up some, a mildly sprained ankle, of a sprained foot, something like that, throughout a football season. It's just too rough of a sport, and he's too physical of a player for that not to happen.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Like, it's not to the point where I think like, oh man, well, Joe Milton should come in on all these red zone packages. I'm not opposed to this, but like, but it's to the point where I think you should take QB2 more seriously than you have.
100%. And I think they made the good decision bringing in a guy like Joe Milton, who not only has future development ability, I think he's someone who can come in and play 2 to 3 games and keep your guys afloat, kind of like Cooper Rush has done in recent seasons. But he's just more dynamic. He gives your offense an ability to be effective in more ways, whereas when Cooper Rush was in there, is kind of like, we're going to just play turnover-free football. We're going to hope our defense plays really well. We're going to keep it close, and hopefully, our kicker, who can make it from 97 yards, is going to take us to prosperity. With Joe Milton, you have ability. Maybe we can score 20 to 28 points in a game, and, not put so much pressure on our defense and our special teams to carry us to victory.
That's really well said. Yeah. Would you not buy house insurance after you bought a house? Would you not buy car insurance after you bought a car? Like, that's really all that's the level of like injury prone I feel like we're at. Okay. Any other Cowboys things you want to get off your chest, John? Anything like that's stuck in your craw?
Not that I can think of. My boy Donovan Ezeraku is going to have a big season. No, I think he's going to be a lot of it is going to come down to opportunity for him. I think he is kind of the guy that I'm most interested in seeing of the new faces on the Cowboys offense or defense. I'm really excited to see his usage in particular, because with Sam Williams coming back, with Marshawn Nealon return, and with Dante Fowler there, I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to deploy him. Is he going to be like a Micah Parsons guy, giving him a breather, every third series or so? Or are they going to give him kind of his own role where he's going to be able to establish himself and, one big thing that I think that gets overlooked with edge rushers is creating a rhythm throughout the game. When you're constantly only allowing them to play 1 in 3 series, or they're only playing a couple snaps here, or you just throw them in pass rush situations here and there, it's really hard to create that rhythm that you're going to get going against the offensive tackle, where you can sense kind of how they use their hands, their movement patterns, their cadence, because every player has their own kind of cadence of how they move, how their hands shoot, those type of things. And as you get more reps and going against them, it's going to be easier for you to break those down and find success. And I'm just going to be very interested to see if maybe he only plays in a part-time role this year and he doesn't have necessarily the volume stats that people would like, but maybe his rate stats are a little bit better. So I'm just very interested to see the myriad of directions that his rookie year can go, because I'm very, very high on him.
We've done this a lot. We did it with the 2 players you named, with Marshawn Nealon, with Sam Williams, the second-round edge rusher we have fallen in love with over and over and over again. But maybe this one will be different. I mean, I think it will. But, I mean, there's a lot of them now. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just
for me personally, he's the highest, quote unquote, of the second round pass rushers that the Cowboys have picked since DeMarcus Lawrence. I think that, Sam Williams, when he was picked, I was actually a little bit lower on Sam Williams than where the Cowboys picked him. Marshawn Nealon, he was right. Cowboys picked him right where I had him graded. Whereas Izaraku, I had him as a first round grade. Tank Lawrence coming out, I had him as a first round grade. So, one of my big vault me takes that I had was, I think that Izaraku is going to be the most impactful second round defensive end edge player since DeMarcus Lawrence was drafted. And
pretty low bar, though. I mean,
yeah, it is quite a huge bar. People don't know DeMarcus Lawrence was the best run defending defensive end, whether you want to go by stats, whether you want to go by PFF grades, whether you want to go by these eyes right here. He was a phenomenal run defender and one of the best players at winning consistently as a pass rusher, generating pressure. The sacks weren't there, but he was generating pressure, and his win rates were with the top guys for maybe 6 to 7 of those of his last decade of his career. So he was a phenomenal player, an elite edge defender, in my opinion. And while I think that's a lot to throw on as a Rocco, I definitely think he has the talent and the ability to get there, even though he is a much different style of edge defender.
Last one before we leave. Something I always look forward to, not that I watch it in any way, but is the Little League World Series. And the reason for that is the truest sign that football is back. Like we make it like the NBA finals are here. That's awesome. But like, we still have a ways to go. You know what I mean? Like Stanley Cup finals, same thing. But like when the Little League World Series rolls around, we are very, very, very close. So I looked it up, and the Little League World Series starts on August 17th. Does the Little League World Series, the first pitch of it, get thrown out before or after Micah Parsons' deal gets done, in your opinion?
After.
Okay, it could be any time after. Like the deal could happen today. You know what I mean? And
yeah, I think it's going to be. I think if I had to guess, I think he's going to agree to a contract either in the week leading up to training camp or the first week of training camp.
See, I'm not trying to push back, but like, who was the last? We say this all the time, like, oh, they love to do their deals at camp, and they used to, but like, who was the last one they did at camp?
My memory doesn't go back that far, RJ. I have been clouded by medicinal products.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, you're quite proud of what you've done to sabotage it.
Short-term memory.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like maybe Zach Martin, I guess, happened at camp, but like CD didn't. Dak Steels never did. Zeke didn't happen at camp. Like my point is, like we only remember that the Tyron, the first Zach, and the Travis Frederick deals got done at camp, and Dez kind of. And we love to say like, oh, they love to do them at camp. When have they? Like, it's been a long time since they did that. So, wow.
You are the historical record. You are the man with the historical record. If I ever need to figure out something that like happened historically or like a move, you're the guy to ask.
Well, I did bring up. Did we say Jeremy Mincy or George Selvey? Yeah, either way, those are some
both of those same things.
Those are some dark days. John Owning, everyone can read you and read the work you edit at PFF.
One more question. I got one more question for you. Okay. This brought up. Every time I've come on here, you've asked me about Scrubs, but now I want to ask you about Scrubs. What do you think about the remake coming out or getting made currently, supposedly?
I think, first of all, that Scrubs, like, it doesn't get quoted in my opinion, as much as other shows when it deserves to be in the like quoted category of like The Office, or like Community gets quoted more often than Scrubs, which is great. Like I'm happy for Community, but Scrubs is like, if you didn't love Scrubs and you're around the age that John and I are, I really judge you significantly. We all know that season 9 doesn't exist and didn't happen. Yeah. So like I'm worried about I'm staunchly opposed to any remakes of anything. It isn't just Scrubs. Like the fact that there's this new Office show. Why? I'm not even opposed to just remakes. Like I don't need a podcast. And this applies to Zach Braff and Donald Faison. I don't need to hear your stories about when you shot Steak Night or whatever. Like
a podcast about a fictional TV show always kind of doesn't make sense to me. I get like the podcasts that come off like, the Survivor podcast where they can kind of tell you about like some of like the ins and outs of
totally with you. Like tell me how you took a dump in the ocean. I will listen to that. But like I don't need to know what it was like the day you shot this episode or how someone was feeling silly or whatever. I mean, I just simply don't. So I want Scrubs to be left alone. And it's funny you ask about Scrubs. You watched Ted Lasso, I assume?
Yes.
It was great. It was funny. It was awesome. I love the Premier League, but it felt kind of Scrubsy, because it's Bill Lawrence. My wife and I started watching Stick, the new one that he did. He also it's got Owen Wilson. He's like a washed up professional golfer and he's helping.
Oh yeah. Isn't that like on Amazon Prime?
It's on Apple TV. And so and Bill Lawrence also did. I never watched Cougar Town, but he did that.
Cougar Town, yeah.
And Shrinking, the one he's done with Marshall from How
They're also very Scrubsy.
They all feel very Scrubsy, and it's like, dude, get a new thing. You know what I mean? I'll watch it, but like, you can't just like be Scrubs. Yeah, like it can't just be the same. Like the reason Scrubs is because it's so authentic and the relationship and the type of relationship. And if you're cheapening Scrubs by doing it so many different times, and now a remake is really annoying. But I've made my feelings clear. How do you feel?
A lot of it's the same. I'm like cautiously optimistic. It's kind of like a thing. Like it would be great if like we had got a new season of Scrubs that was like the old ones. There was like a continuation. Skipping season 9. Season 9, season 9 redo. But also, I think of like how realistic is it that it's going to hit those notes for you now that these people are so much older. They've done so much more stuff. Bill Lawrence has done all these different other types of shows. How is it going to be able to recreate that nostalgia? Probably not. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to watch, the first couple of episodes to see what I thought and to see if it, rekindled that flame, because I'm just so those characters just have such a close place in my heart from growing up. One funny thing is me and one of my best friends, Javar, he's actually a doctor now. And he was the guy like that I would watch Scrubs with. We would like marathons when he would come over. That'd be what we put on when we were just hanging out and as the background filler. It was like something we really bonded over during our high school years. But once he became a doctor, he said he can't watch it anymore because it gives him anxiety because of how realistic some of, it's comedically punched up, but how realistic some of the scenarios are. And he was just talking about how much anxiety it gave him, and he couldn't enjoy it anymore because he was thinking about all the parallels to his real life work that it has. And he was just like, I can't do it anymore. And it just made me so sad.
I totally get that. I watched Grey's Anatomy for a long time, and people said that Scrubs was by far the most like, I don't know if anatomically correct is the term, but like the most authentic to that, the world of medicine. But like, to your point, I saw a TikTok the other day, the germ passing episode, the green hand, like I saw that clip and I was like, I wanted to like scream at all the commenters, like, you have no idea what this was like when you were 16 years old. Like, to watch this, like it truly like warped your brain. And so to that point, that like, it's a really emotional show. And you can't just like bottle the emotion up and be like, I'm going to apply this to Shrinking, and I'm going to apply this to Cougar Town, and I'm going to apply this to Ted Lasso. Like, it doesn't work that way.
I think that was the biggest problem with season 9 is there was too jokey. Didn't pull at your heartstrings enough. There wasn't enough of that emotional pull to really draw you in and keep you in. It was just kind of like cheap gags the entire time with, I'm really not a fan of him as like an actor in most shows, unless it's like just like an Adam Sandler comedy, but Little Franco.
Oh yeah,
He's just like
Dave.
too jokey the entire time. And it really pulled me out of like being in the series.
He's funny and very specific archetypes. I'm with you
100%.
there. Okay, now since you asked, let's end this way. Let's power rank the core Scrubs characters, and you can power rank them how you want, like coolest, people I'd most like to have a beer with, people I'd most like to damage my memory with, people I'd most like to break down Donovan Ezuraku film with. But we'll go JD, Turk, we'll go Elliot, Carla, Kelso, and Dr. Cox. Those are the 6.
Well, number one is Dr. Cox. Dr. Cox, in my opinion, is the guy that makes the show. Like, he just takes it, he punches it above the ceiling. You know,
there's a phenomenon, like people say, like when you first watch Seinfeld, you want to be Jerry, but then you realize you're George. Like that, it's the same sort of like you want it to be JD, but it's really Dr. Cox. He's I agree with you.
So I would go Dr. Cox number 1. That it gets tough after that because I hate Kelso at the beginning, those first like 3 seasons, but I love what Kelso when he turns to when he's, you know, giving away the head of medicine to Dr. Cox, and then when he's just, you know, hanging around after that. I love that kind of.
You got to pick, John. You got to do it.
I know. Okay, I'll go Cox 1.
I think Turk 2. Turk is 2 easily.
JD 4. No, Carla 4, JD 5.
Who was your 3?
Cox, Turk, and Kelso.
Okay. So Elliot's last for you.
Yeah, she's the one. She plays like an important part. You know, I wouldn't want her to not be there. But out of all of them, I'm like, you know.
I don't know, man. I mean,
she had the Batingo and the Pachingo and that stuff gets.
I think JD might be last. Like, he's kind of whiny when you look back on it.
Oh,
you know?
Yeah, for sure. So, for sure, the super whiny.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
I think when you're talking all the time, I would be so annoyed. I'm like, bro.
I'll close this way, even though I disagreed with your list. One of my best friends had the shirt.
No, give me your list.
Well, I sort of did, but Cox, Turk. Okay. I think Elliot's cool. I think Elliot would like stay in her own lane. You know what I mean?
What's your favorite Elliot? Which version of Elliot? Is it the?
I think Elliot was the coolest when she wasn't dating JD. When she was dating the younger doctor. Like that's when she was the best part of the group. You know what I mean? Like, she was happy, she was good, she had her life sorted, everything was great with her. I'll go Kelso 4, just because he falls down a bit because he would be annoying at times. You know, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like I could be honest enough with Elliot. Like, hey, I just need some space. She'd be like, okay, cool. You know, we're good. And I'll go Carla 5. I think Carla would be a good hang. I just think other people would be more fun. And JD's awesome, but like somebody's got to be last. You know what I mean? Like, somebody's the least favorite friend. He's Phoebe. You know.
Yeah, that's true.
But on that subject, I had a friend who had I always wanted it. He had the red T-shirt with the football. It was like a football, and it said soccer underneath. It was a shirt that JD had in one of the episodes. Yeah. It was great.
That's a good shirt.
It was great.
Sure they have it like on Teespring or something like that.
I'm positive that they have it on Teespring. We already gave a lot of free ads to like Apple TV and stuff, but you just gave one to Teespring. So,
or your homage.
Homage. They're very specific about that. Homage, yeah.
Let's go homage. Get that up.
They might have some Scrubs tees now that I think about it, but I'll look into it. John, best of luck with Fantastic Four. I know you're right. Actually, this is my truly last question. Your level of hope in Fantastic Four being a certifiably good Marvel movie relative to everything Marvel's been in the past is equivalent to your faith in which Dallas Cowboys player at the moment.
Oh, so faith. I mean, hope and faith are very different things.
Hope, faith, trust. You can take it wherever you want. But you get the premise here. Okay,
so
I'm pretty proud of this question. I think it's pretty creative.
A good question. I would say Cooper Beebe. So, I think he's gonna be really. I think if you had to ask me, I think it's gonna be really good. But there's enough in the past, you know. There's enough factors that go in where I could see it not going well, and I could see it being a big failure.
Wow. Cooper Pascal, basically. John, you're the man. PFF all day, every day. Anything else you want to plug?
Just read Pro Football Focus. Click on your friends' articles, whether it's at PFF's, Blogging the Boys, you know, our boy KD's, anybody, the Skywalker Steals, their links, Vach Lombardi, DallasCowboys.com. Anybody, just click on the links. Even if you're not going to read it, it really helps out everybody get those metrics up, help everybody get paid more, keep their jobs. Everybody knows in this environment how tough it is to keep a job. As we saw, Yahoo just had some layoffs. So please help out your favorite content creators. Doesn't take long. Just click on the links.
Man, that is well spoken. John Owning, everybody. Give him a hug next time you see him.